Welcome back, Battletech enthusiasts. Today we're going to have something special. We're going to play out a game of Battletroops. That is the original foot soldier on foot soldier game of Battletech. The front cover art has some Kurita troops after having successfully downed a mech smoking in the background, as you can see here, which is pretty cool as an idea. Now, the only annoying thing is my particular copy of the game didn't come with the cutout figures, so I had to use just the bases, but I have ordered some metal 25mm figurines that I'll use for future battles. The main basis of the game are these firing arcs. The soldier that has decided to shoot will set up a firing arc, and then anything that crosses into it during that unit's turn can get shot at. This means that if you set up a firing arc to point at a soldier that has not moved yet, the moment that soldier moves, that firing arc gets resolved. So effectively, if you set up a firing arc, it means you've already kind of taken the shot. This seems a little bit strange and counterintuitive at first, but once you try it out, it makes perfect sense. And basically, combat is not simultaneous, unlike in a standard Battletech game. So a standard Battletroop game, whatever happens first, and any firing arcs that are pointed at a soldier get resolved before the rest of that soldier's move. So it's like you have to check to see whether your soldier is actually alive at the beginning of that particular soldier's turn. There's also mech templates, so in theory you could even do a full mech-on-mech fight, but the game is really designed to be around foot soldiers, so you really want to do like foot soldiers against a mech if you want to have mechs in the game, but in theory you could. And the same thing for vehicles. You can, in theory, have a full vehicle against a mech or full vehicles only battle, but really the game is centered around foot soldiers, and otherwise you should play with a different system anyway. And then if the basic game gets boring, then you can add a whole bunch of optional rules, including vehicles and mechs, including fires and area of effect explosive weapons and debris and all kinds of additional complexity. But I found the game enjoyable just with the basic, simple rules, with only grenades. Basically, a soldier sets up a firing arc depending on how many moves they have available at the end of their turn, and then anybody who crosses through that during one of their turns, including at the beginning of their turn starting off in it, can get shot if the soldier with the arc chooses to do so, and that resolves immediately before the moving soldier has a chance to do any other actions. There are also a variety of penalties and bonuses and line of sight rules for if you're hiding behind a window, or if you're prone behind a window, or if you're behind a tree or a tree trunk or branches, and whether you're adjacent to them or not. So you can kind of hide behind things and get a defensive bonus from them, but have them not affect your aim, because you're kind of using it as part of your, like, propping your rifle against it or something. But if you're some distance away from it, then it does interfere with your aim. There's also a injury system based on these boxes that you cross off depending on whether it's bruising or lethal damage. I decided for this particular game, I'm going to get rid of this and simplify this, and instead just treat everyone as your first hit, you're injured, your second hit, you're killed. And the reason for that is the injury system is quite complicated, and you can really get into it if you want to and have that as complexity, but I'm thinking it might just interfere with the smooth flow of the game if you want the game to just go fast. I also am representing injuries just with a red die next to the player, or next to the base stand that represents the soldier. So if you see a red die or some other small die that's not one of the two white die, then that means that's an injury marker. So I picked the first scenario that came with the game. It's basically a scouting mission. You have one squad scouting another squad with roughly this map layout, 2 of the 4 maps that come with the game, which simulates being deep inside a urban or suburban area with lots of buildings. Some of them are multiple stories and some are just one story. And the goal is just to get a couple of your troops on the far edge of the map and then come back to the original edge that you started on, and the two sides start on opposing edges. One thing is, in Battletroops, you only roll initiative once, and after that the two teams just alternate sides. So in my game, Davion wins the initiative. They're on Liao's on the north edge and Davion's on the south edge. And this is kind of the overall view, the top view of the battlefield. Because I simplified the game and just gave everyone rifles, the first thing I noticed that rifles can reach all the way across the map. And this is important because it means that this central alleyway is very dangerous. Basically, anyone caught walking down this central alleyway will pretty much get shot. So both sides decided that they would avoid this alleyway at all costs, instead go through the buildings on both sides. So when I first looked at the Davion side, I decided that they would try sending 2 fire teams forward and have one fire team stay in the back as snipers in the tallest building that they happen to have access to. Maybe one guarding the central alleyway and the other just high up. And that was kind of the initial thinking as to what Davion would do. Then when I looked at Liao and their starting position, I decided that a similar strategy was the best strategy. But the adjacent building was higher, so I decided that one soldier would climb really high up to the 3rd floor, and another would kind of stay on ground level because they had a really nice guarding shot from 2 different windows to almost completely sever the map in half. Now, since Davion wins initiative, which really doesn't count for much because there's no contact on the first turn really, everyone just ran forward or tried to enter buildings. Liao did pretty much the same thing. One fire team took up this 3-story building on the top left of the map, and the other soldiers all went forward. Now, on turn 2, both sides pretty much were either entering buildings or approaching doorways and attempting to enter a building. But I noticed that the Davion side was taking their rearward building as originally planned, and had decided they didn't like on the left edge of their map, which would be the kind of the western edge. They didn't like that building, so they decided to go forward another building instead. A similar thing played out on the Liao side. Most of the turn was spent inside buildings or creeping forward and bounding across a danger space, which is basically an empty space between buildings. But since both sides knew where the other side's troops were, just because that's how this game was played. I didn't have a GM to kind of have hidden units, but I played each troop as if they didn't know the exact locations of any other troops other than our friendly units, because I'm assuming they have comm links and maybe some HUD display over their eye or something, or a Google Glass or something. So I assumed each side only knew the exact locations of its own troops and only the general location of the other troops. So I acted as if each troop was moving tactically inside buildings because they didn't know where enemy troops were. They might be just right around the corner inside the building, who knows. Now I'm going to show you the time lapse of the game as it actually played out. And a lot happened, so I'll have to unpack it later and go through the turns bit by bit. But basically the game quickly got bogged down into window sniping and building to building window sniping with a grenade thrown at one point, although it didn't really hit its intended target. And then finally one group, very much if you saw Zero Dark 30, very much in a Bin Laden raid-like scenario, charged up the stairs with the troop leader, who happened to be the squad leader, shooting the remaining soldier in that building with his last bit of 2 movement point arc aimed directly at that soldier who had been injured previously, so that was a kill shot. It's like almost like you're running up the stairs and shooting the enemy soldier in the head. Well, Davion won this battle, but it was not because they won initiative. The game really turned at one moment when the long-range rear sniper happened to defeat the Liao long-range rear sniper just by pure accident. At that point, a lot of movement was freed up, and then that was it for Liao. Also, several lucky shots took down some Liao troops in the middle battleground. Now, I really didn't know what to expect out of this. I was expecting this to play out more like the intended scout mission, where combat would be somewhat avoided, and then some groups would sneak past each other and would get to the northern edge or the southern edge, but that's not what happened at all. Instead, it got quickly bogged down with everyone hiding inside windows, sniping out from windows at each other, and except for the last burst where one side gained an advantage through lucky hits and whatnot, or tactical accidents, or tactical planning, depending on whose side you're on. And then with their finale charged up to finish off the last soldier that was in a combat effective position. So it was just kind of turned into a meat grinder. But I noticed that as soon as one side had the advantage, because they just got a lot more shots than the other, they quickly collapsed the other side. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this battle report of the Battletroop first mission, which just comes with the game. I like this a lot. I'm thinking that the next battle I might try playing with the full injury system that they have in the game. And I also might try something like a rogue goblin or a vedette against a squad or two and see what happens, rather than having a squad versus squad, just to kind of mix it up and see what it would be like to try to take on a tank if you've just got a squad. What kind of a situation and what kind of dire straits are you in exactly? Also, I'm intending to have my 25mm soldier figurines, the metal figurines, ready and painted according to the various factions and their official standards from the 3025 vintage books, and then it'll be nicer.